for Immersive Learning Research. And then we'll formally close the session and the conference. So that's what we're doing. So the first thing, as I say, is the science fiction prototyping competition. And for those of you who attended the workshop on Monday, we had a kind of practice go at writing some science fiction prototypes, and we had some prizes then as well. And during the course of the conference, we've asked you to submit your own science fiction prototypes by tweeting them. So we've collected all the tweets, and you've then been voting by liking them, and we've looked at the number of likes, and based on that, have awarded a first, second, and third place in terms of prizes. We also have a special mention as well, just to make things more interesting. So I'm going to go through in reverse order from special mention up to first place. So if you want a drum roll, it's a start. So we've got a special mention because one of the stories was submitted by somebody who's not at the conference. So we felt we couldn't actually award them a prize, but we are going to mention them because they technically then came fourth, and that's Kai Grenley, in Vienna. Kai's been a long-standing associate of ours anyway, well known to us. We've worked with him on a number of things in the past. So can everybody see his story there? I can read it out. So Kai is crying because he can't be at ILRN2017 SFP. So he sets his work screen to semi-live and sets his in-here headphone chip to join virtual. So obviously he's very sad that he can't be here, so we do hope that Kai can be at future ILRNs in the future. So he gets a special mention, but unfortunately not a prize, so thank you. Okay, now we get to the big money, because and there's a bit of contention here as well. The third place gets an Amazon token for $10, so don't spend it all at once, but hopefully it's a nice little incentive anyway. So we've got actually 2 third place entries. They had equal votes. So I'm going to announce the 2 joint third place, and then I think we're going to ask you to toss a coin for who gets the prize. Because we've only got one of these, so that's I think what we're going to try. So the third place, again drum roll, is Min Wan and Paul McCulloch. I think Paul's left. He's left. I know Min Wan's gone as well, so I may have to. We'll toss a coin on their behalf after the event and notify which one has won and pass them on their prize. But can you read their stories up there, or do you want me to read them out? Okay, I'll read them out. I'll do my best. Okay, Min Wan first. Classrooms will be extinct. Teachers live broadcast their lectures and interact with students around the world using VR, AR, and AI. So that's Min Wan's story. Then Paul, who's an old hand at this, he's participated in various creative science events we've had. So I know he'll be pleased to be mentioned here. So Paul's story, tech warning. Nobel and Berners-Lee opened Pandora's box. 2017, bombs and logic bombs, ransom and ransomware. Alexa can be turned back. You can see Paul's quite good at this actually in terms of the storytelling. So well done to Paul, well done to Min Wan. Okay, so let's move to the second prize then, which is for $20. And hopefully the person's here. I can't remember now who it was, so let's do a big reveal. It's Aaron. Is Aaron here? Yeah. Yes! Yeah. I can let you read out your own story, Aaron.
Sure.
Okay, well, that's your voucher. I'll give you that. And, well done. Thank you very much. Would you like to do the honours?
Sure. Lost, her cold fingers trembled. She'd been here before. Now, without her headset, she was afraid, but knew what to do.
It's good. You read it better than I do. Okay, and now the big one. First place in the ILRN2017 science fiction prototyping competition, and the princely sum of a $30 Amazon voucher, and that's awarded to, and I can just low tech, take that away, Johanna. Now I think she is here, isn't she? There she is. I can let you read out your own story as well, Johanna.
Take the money and run.
Yeah. I'll pass you that. Okay.
Next up, take the money and run. Wow, I'm so ready now, said Al, and tripped over the keyboard of the VR Heat simulator.
Okay, I hope that's been a bit of fun, but I think, it's always great fun to read the stories. I really enjoyed it, and I've, obviously voted myself. I have my own story, but didn't quite get there, unfortunately, but hopefully next time. So we're going to be thinking about what we're doing with science fiction prototyping for next year's conference. We want to try something a bit different next year, so watch this space, but we think it's a good way of engaging with you during the conference. So thank you very much for participating. I do need to mention, before we move on, just the organisers involved, particularly Anasol back at base in Essex. She did all the coordination of the Twitter, the retweeting, counting the votes and so on. So I'd like to thank Anasol actually while we're all here. Can we do that, please? Okay, so that's the SFP Awards part done. I'll pass over to you, John, and you're going to move on to step 2. Do you want this or?
This will work, I think. It's almost lunchtime. What? We forgot.
Yeah, we did it. Yeah. I should have done this just now. I did forget, actually, so I'm going to embarrass somebody twice now. So we did have an award also for best costume from last night. Now, it was a difficult decision that had to be made, because so many of you did come in costumes, but we did manage to narrow it down. And the winner of the ILRN2017 best costume, I'm happy to say, is Johanna. So, Johanna. Sorry, and actually, this was pretty good, actually. This was for $50 on Amazon. So, costumes.
It takes bravery.
So next year, make sure you get a costume, because it's worth it.
We may have costume trunks, and you won't be able to sit down and eat until you're wearing a costume. Better if you choose yourself.
Okay, sorry.
Big money.
Big money, yeah. Okay, as some of you might recall from the beginning, back on Monday, when we started, iLRN is really looking to grow in terms of value, in the way that we can serve the community. So we're really looking for honest feedback, as well as a variety of services and potential activities that we can do that will be valuable to you. So one of the things that we did was to put up these poster boards, a very low-tech kind of mechanism for getting that feedback. Sometimes low-tech is still the best, although we could have maybe used electronic. So we have a number of different questions that we put there, and we'd like to continue to engage the community in these ways, but this is some of the things that we kind of gathered so far. So the first question that we had was, what are some of the critical challenges that are facing immersive learning research generally? So just a few. Number one, or on the list there, was actually defining operationally what is immersive learning. As many of you know who are doing research, having an operational definition that works is useful for people that in various disciplines. So if we use the same terminology and it is broad enough and yet narrow enough, that would be a good thing to have. And that's kind of a potentially critical issue. Another one was to connect the research to industry. Right? There's a lot of potential corporate and business entities out there who are doing a whole lot of development in this VR, AR, haptic interface fields. And we are doing the research. A lot of us are doing research. Some people here are connected through industry, but for practice to be informed by what's going on in these fields would be great. So we'd really like to find ways to reach out to industry, yet maintain our research focus. Right? In theory, research and practice should be closely connected, but in practice, maybe sometimes not. Another one was that perhaps the non-digital, immersive aspects of what we're studying could be highlighted and included within the research network, what we're talking about. So how do non-technical ways of immersing, right? You can read a book, a novel, and become extremely immersed in that novel. Likewise, there's all kinds of different motivations that can hook people into becoming immersed. So all sorts of activities that create that sense of flow. Okay, that's what we had for that. Another aspect we had talked about or put up on one of the poster boards there were who might we, that is iLRN, partner with. We are a network, and of course we're composed of individuals, people who are contributing and people that iLRN, the network, is serving, but we'd also like to talk about larger organizations and other groups that we might connect to. So some of the feedback that we got was, like on the last question, was more industry members. So getting people here who are representing some of these, the hardware and products that are being created would be great for us to connect. Someone wrote down the heritage museums and primary schools. So again, that's through the applied, right? People who are actually, working to apply immersive learning within particular contexts to certain kinds of members of the population. They would be fantastic for us to reach out to as well. That's a great idea. The IEEE, for us to have an IEEE stamp on the iLRN organization and our conference, I think would help a lot of people to justify coming to the conference. So that's a fantastic idea as well. Someone wrote down more game designers and people who play games. And that's also a fantastic thing. So really getting people immersed within gameplay and having that as part of the conference and having that on the Immersive Learning Research Network page wehighlighted in a variety of ways might be a really fantastic way for us to broaden the scope and even the depth of what we're doing. Education researchers. I see ALT in the UK. ALT.
Yeah, Association of Learning Technologies.
Association of Learning Technologies,
They
right?
have a big conference in September in the UK.
Also Playful Learning in the UK, right? Might be a similar partner. And the Interactive Digital Storytelling Association. They're an international conference. ICIDS. I don't know what that one is, right? So, please.
Yeah, I wrote that one that raised this Association of Interactive Digital Storytelling and like one way we have games and experiences where you have to achieve something, and on the other side we have storytelling to immerse. So I think that interactive digital storytelling could be a good complement to immersive learning.
Absolutely, absolutely. There's some really interesting overlap there between the two groups, and perhaps we could work together to highlight that overlap. Yeah, fantastic. Great. So thank you. And if anybody else has any other potential partners that didn't get on this list, please let us know. We're looking to become quite a bit more assertive in reaching out to different associations, whether it's in whatever disciplinary field that you're in. So thank you. Ideas for iLRN collaboration, sort of similar with the partnerships, but a different tack in some ways. So we had businesses showcasing products, working with academics to brainstorm issues. Right? So we have various industry partners. One thing that we might do is to get industry partners here at the conference and then do active brainstorming sessions where we would highlight some of the issues that people are facing and then connecting the research with the practice in practical as well as creative ways. So that might be an interesting collaborative experience. Regarding regional meetings, have one or half-day meetings in different places all over the world. That's actually already an opportunity, and any of you who would like to host an iLRN regional or local event could definitely do that. And so you could do a simulcast, or you could bring people together from your area, from your nation, or from a region of the world, and you could do a smaller event. We have had plans on putting together a kit that would allow people to say, here's the things that you need to do to host an iLRN meeting. And that didn't ever get actually put on the web, but we've got the beginning sketches of that. So if anybody's interested in putting together a regional iLRN event, just contact us and we'll help you put that together. Making the podcast more visible and how to feature what's on the podcast in various places. And we've actually worked on that a little bit as well. Patrick left. Yeah, Patrick's on, but Patrick hosts the Versatilist podcast. The Versatilist is someone who's both a specialist as well as a generalist. So they're an expert in one particular area, but they cross a variety of different areas. And does that not describe the people who are working in immersive learning fairly well? You can't just be good in one area of these things. You have to kind of know a broad amount, but then you also have to be very good at one specific thing. So that's a challenge for us in terms of finding people across the spectrum who can. But the podcast is going very well. How many of you have checked out the podcast? Anybody listen to the podcast? A couple people. Check it out. It's on our iLRN page, and identifying it by keyword, hosting forums online in addition to the podcast. There's a number of things that we've talked about, but we're actually in the past year have been investing a bit more energy and a little bit of money into the podcast. But that's one way of building some of our visibility. Somebody else wrote that an idea for collaboration between museums from the United States and Europe and other museums from perhaps like Egypt to investigate how cultural and social factors affect immersive learning when the same technologies and tactics are utilized. Okay? So Espen Nofal wrote that, and he put his contact information. So there's a specific way that we might be able to collaborate. Would you like to elaborate a little bit on that?
No, I believe actually that learning influenced by social and cultural factors. Mm-hmm. That's why we have to, investigate how these factors affect the learning in different parts of the world, not only in Europe and the US, but also other parts like the Arab world.
Right. Yeah, that is fascinating. I think I mentioned to you that at least some of the Native American tribes, they are taught from a very early age not to look people in the eyes when they are talking to you. So when an elder is speaking to someone, they look away, they look down. And yet, in Western culture, the greater culture in Montana, they're like, why are you paying attention? Look at me. And yet the sign of respect is to not look at them. So there's interesting, that's just one, right? I mean, there's all sorts of other aspects in terms of presence, in terms of collaborating, communicating that we draw from culturally. Every time we have iLRN, I'm just amazed at all the different cultures that are represented, and sometimes struggling in terms of like some of my biases and from where I come from in the United States, seeing people's postures, seeing people the way that their cadences go. So I think there's a whole lot of things that we could investigate in there. Does that add to what you were talking about?
Yeah.
Okay. Don't want to just blab on. Another poster that was put up there was, I wish iLRN would, ... ellipses. A focus on immersive learning on different parts of the world. Right? Similar thing. Good crossover. Partner with IEEE and ACM. Good. That's also come up. Develop explicit rewards for membership, like a discount to journals, partnerships, CPD. CPD.
Continuing professional development.
Oh, continuing professional development credits. Yeah, ECUs. Good. Definitely, and we want to have a clear value proposition for what being a member of iLRN is all about, and that definitely needs to speak to a variety of different people. So you know what you're getting out of this. Someone else wrote that be clear about the publication of the proceedings because it wasn't known by the track organizers in terms of whether or not they were going to be included in the Springer Journal, or if you weren't included in the Springer Journal, what that meant. And so that was a good comment, something that we've actually been aware of. And we want to be clear that we want to be clear. Definitely, if any of you felt that what we had promised was not what was delivered, then we want to take responsibility. I want to take responsibility for that, and we want to correct that. So perception is rock solid, and reality is negotiable. So we will work to fix that. Okay. A few people wrote that we could hold different iLRN conferences in various places. Egypt, Italy, both came up on the boards. And likewise, if anybody has any other opportunities or places that they think would be a good place to host, we can do that. And I think that's all we have for feedback. We will be posting in your email. We'll give you a couple days to travel back to your respective homeland or wherever you're traveling next. But in a few days, we will be sending an email with a survey link for you to provide us with your own impressions of the iLRN conference. And we would really like you to click on that link and give us that feedback so that we can use that to improve our future conferences. What do we have next on our
panel?
Panel! I need some company. Come on up, guys. Everyone, I think we've talked to a few people about being part of this panel. Daphne.
Okay, we thought it would be useful to sort of kind of close the conference to just sort of have an open discussion around some of the issues. Oh, Christian.
Okay.
Christian's a really keen panelist, as you can tell. So this is really just not as an opportunity for the panelists, but for you guys to engage in a discussion at the end of the conference, really. And this can be based on anything you've seen here this week, or things that come up in the discussion, or things particularly that you think are important. So we've made the question pretty general, actually, and just looking forward as whatever we are, researchers, practitioners, or whatever we do in this space, what the issues are, particularly as we're the Immersive Learning Research Network. We thought initially let's look at research and some of the issues with that. So particularly looking at the opportunities in terms of the positives that are around at the moment, and then the challenges in terms of perhaps some of the negative things that we have to deal with if we are to move forward. So that's the very simple question we've got. So we've got a number of panellists here. So what I suggest we do is ask each of you just to say a couple of words, 2 minutes, say, on this question, and then we'll open the floor. The idea is we don't have a big presentation to you. We just really kick off the presentation, the discussion, and then open the floor. So should we start at this?
I can go first.
Okay.
Yeah.
Go first.
I guess what I see as, a primary opportunity. I can be the loud American too. I'm good at that. The opportunity that's facing immersive learning research is really collaborations. And two main collaborations, the one between academic institutions and industries, and building those collaborations and partnerships. And then secondly, interdisciplinary collaborations between different areas, with geography, with computer science, with literature, with just a wide variety of different academic fields and subject areas. And then the challenge is actually very related to that. And that is, as an instructional designer by training, I spend a lot of time looking at what are the objectives, and then what are the learning activities that are aligned to those objectives, and what are the assessments that help assess whether we reach those objectives. And the reality is, computer science and education and the different academic fields, as well as industry and academia, all have different objectives. And I think we need to go into these collaborations with our eyes open to that. The objectives are going to be different, but what we need to do is look in terms of outcomes. What are the similar outcomes that we want? Because we can come into it with different objectives and use different means, but if we have similar outcomes, we can still have productive collaborations.
Okay, so I want to address an issue what puzzles me really for a long time, actually. And during all my research, what I noticed, whenever a new technology come up in respective to learning and training, first of all, we try to use the same kind of pedagogic approaches, just using the new technology. And I think this is so wrong. And what I would like to do is, or iLRN could do is, try to look a bit into the future, what are the emerging technologies, and start as early as possible to do some serious research also to identify new ways in terms of pedagogic approaches.
I also see as challenges, opportunities, great opportunities here for researching technical aspects of enabling teachers and students to learn effectively, but also pedagogical aspects, as you mentioned, new educational methods and techniques and pedagogies that can be applied. A great challenge is how we can effectively use the technology to really immerse using VR users in different reality, to use design techniques to emotionally and psychologically immerse users for a prolonged period of time, because in learning, it's after a prolonged period of time that you can assess if learning has been achieved. To enable teachers to use technology to create bespoke simulations to serve their educational needs, because many times we see technological solutions that when it comes into adapting them, teachers adapting these technologies is quite difficult. So we need to offer tools to enable the people on the field, on the ground, they do the work to adapt these technologies to their educational needs. And also use immersive technology to enable creative new forms of educational methods, empowering the students as well to take control of their learning. A great talent as well is to use immersive learning to enable students via adaptivity and personalization. Here again, we've seen examples of how cultural heritage can effectively be used in education. So connecting physical location and virtual, using virtual technologies and connecting them to physical location in order to enhance reality with virtual reality.
That's great. There's a lot of hype right now and a lot of money being put into virtual reality and augmented reality, etc. And many people in the Immersive Learning Research Network have actually been working in this space, pun intended, for quite some time, a long time. We face the threat of being somewhat obsolete because of this massive amount of money, because of the massive amount of work and expertise that is being put into this space. But it's also an opportunity for us. If, as a research organization, if as researchers individually can figure out how to position ourselves in ways that value becomes more transparent, more immediate, and more effective. So I see us at the cusp of being so much potential and so much danger simultaneously that if we begin to work together now in a smart way that's responsive to these trends that are happening, we can inform humanity and the world. Or we can let it slide by. And some of us can take advantage of some aspects of it, but I see this huge potential. I want to give a plug for that environmental scanning effort that we have begun, and iLRN's trying to be that organization that might help us to define immersive learning. In the 100 years ago, history, the study of the discipline of history was not a discipline. All these different people working on from different perspectives had to work together to define the structure and the nature of the academic discipline of history. Similarly, in the 1980s, kinesthesiology was not a thing. And different people from across different disciplines had to define that phenomenon of kinesthesiology. Potentially, immersive learning is such a thing. I think it might be because technology can overlay the human biological systems that we naturally have from birth. Reading and writing is secondary. Moving through 3D space comes naturally. So if we can figure that out and inform the rest of the world, we may be making a huge contribution. That's what I see. So that environmental scanning might help us to bring that together, push that forward.
Okay. I'm keen to get to the discussion, so I'm going to hand over to Lionel.
Okay. Okay. I would like to pick up with that idea of being at the cusp, and then the next opportunity we do face. We are also at the cusp of widespread adoption, and that means that we can take the opportunity to basically help out practitioners develop the methods and the approaches for doing it on a daily basis. It will take quite some effort, but it does enable us to scale immensely and to get answers for really interesting questions like effectiveness and impact, which only come from large scale. As with challenges, I'd like to add another different next perspective also, which is we need, due in part also to all of that has been said, and particularly some amount of money, we need the cooperation of experts in specific fields that are not related to immersive environments or don't even care about immersive environments. When we talk about gesture detection, these are guys from artificial intelligence that will work on gesture detection today, and tomorrow we'll try to use the same algorithms and knowledge, and I don't know, to make a submarine go faster. So we really need to involve lots of people whose major interest is not our own. And that means that at this moment, we can no longer have the typical answer for our own relevance. The typical answer would be to create our own journals, to create lots of events, and so that no longer works because the world is so flooded with events and outlets that they simply get ignored. So this means that a big challenge we have is to extend and establish strong connections and draw in strong participants from established outlets of scientific and industrial participation and become recognized, and this requires lots of community effort on our part, helping out each other, and become recognized as valuable experts and contributors to the field. So we, in some part, are doing that, but we really need to come up with joint projects. We need to invite each other more often to participate in panels when possible. We need as much as possible to become involved, not in our own journals, but in the editorial boards of established journals, not in immersive environments, but in other fields, so that we can make this field relevant and not a minute subsection of some other field.
Okay. Right. Thank you for that. I mean, that's a really nice cross-section and lots of issues raised there, which, hopefully we can pick up on now. So if we can open the floor up, but if you want to ask a question or comment on what you've heard or ask a particular panelist on a particular topic, please, now is your opportunity. Does anybody like to ask a question? Stand silence.
It's more of an observation, but picking up on your point about it really is at a cusp, and I think there's a danger that particularly VR, as in a headset-mounted VR and view of the world, wipes away all the really good stuff that's been done on a more of a 3D view of the world. And it's making sure that idea of using 3D immersive learning, which almost any school can do now because they've got the kit, doesn't disappear because everybody's fixated about, I've got to buy 700 quid for the Oculus Rift to get anywhere close to this. So I think making sure that message gets out loud and clear, I think it's absolutely vital.
Yeah, I mean, part of that's language, I think. Really. I only found out recently, what I've been doing for the last 10 years isn't virtual worlds. It's not to use the virtual environments.
There are moves, yes.
Yeah, moves. So the whole terminology thing, is now virtual worlds are all the immersive headset thing. And kind of, as you say, the could be taking over now, and we'll forget all that past work, but we shouldn't do that. Anybody else want to comment on that?
Yeah, I think there's a good point there implicit. I think maybe heard through it or making it up. But there's that separating the hype from the reality. That the hype cycle with all the marketing and the money, you need to go out and buy this $750 set. But yeah, you can do it in other ways that are much more practical and cheap. Maybe that's one effort that we can help do is to keep people grounded, oddly enough, in reality.
I think that goes back to the definition of immersive learning, because immersive learning doesn't necessarily occur with 3D in 3D virtual environments. There are other forms that they are very effective, sometimes more effective because they are less distracting. And there are still lots of issues, technical issues in 3D VR that obscure, that they distract us from being focused in a specific task that we have to focus for. So,
before going on to the next question, I'd just like to add, that one of the things that I think shows we are in the cusp of adoption is that, let's say, when the hype of 3D virtual worlds began, which amazingly enough was about 11 years ago already, you could find money to set it up, but not to maintain it and make it successful. So people would want to write the headlines in newspapers, but that's it. Where now you hardly hear about it, but every more and more I see organizations that are willing not to buy them, but to actually provide the technical support teams for the sustainability of the stuff. So I think we are at the moment where people are not making splash announcements, but are willing to really make it part of their daily routine. So that's the quite interesting part.
Yeah, definitely. Of course. Anybody else want to respond on that before we move to the next question? Or okay, Alan.
Well, I just think we need to be really careful about the way we kind of think about technologies, because like the virtual headset stuff and viewing it in a screen, they're not competitive technologies, and we shouldn't have an allegiance to a technology and think, well, we need to promote this technology versus that technology. For me, the question is, how do these technologies work together? What do they offer that's positive? What do they offer that's negative? How do you actually get the best? How do you actually go about getting the best out of them? And so when you have the headset thing, I think we start from an analysis of, what does this offer? What is the functionality? What is similar to and what is different to? And therefore, what does it offer in terms of an enhancement? And therefore, how can we go about using it? And it clearly is an enhancement, because when I stand on a wall in a virtual environment and I look down, I feel as though I'm physically there, which is something which just does not happen to me when I look at it on a screen. Now that's, might have some educational significance or others, but it's clearly a difference and it's clearly an enhancement. And I think that sort of, and on the other side, there's the issue of, I think, mobility. Because the Oculus Rift doesn't offer mobility, you're stuck in one place, and the use of mobile phones and Google Cardboard. I think that thinking about the sort of dimensions that have been freed up as technology advances and moves forward, and how they can be used in the future, is really the challenge for us. And we can kind of draw graphs about what the resolution is we'd like to have in 5 years' time, what the interactions we'd like to have in 5 years' time, in 10 years' time, and based upon that, draw pictures of the functionality that's likely to be available for us. Of course, the difficult job then is working out what in 5 years' time we can do with that functionality.
But it's all about understanding the affordances, really, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's really that whole point, really. We really don't. Yeah, we got bits of the picture, but they're not really joined up. And actually, one of the things I think struck me was what Min Wan said this morning: bring your own device. I think that's a massive opportunity. We're now in a situation where every student's got a super powerful computer in their pocket. It may be limited compared to the headset, but the opportunities are enormous. So there's a whole continuum of capabilities, and this is, I think, a big step forward. Anybody else want to comment on that, Christian?
Yeah, so I just want to add something to your thoughts. We also should think about efficiency. So I have seen over the last couple of days a lot of fancy stuff, but not always, that's my opinion, it might be really efficient using it for learning. So the school kids probably, they would love it. They play around with this kind of tools, but at the end have to really learn a lot. Sometimes probably it's even better to go back to the old kind of ways to teach. So I think we also have to be careful when we use these new technologies.
Yeah, to me, it really highlights the work that's kind of in front of us as a group. We need to really identify each of these affordances and their constraints for each type of application as it's connected to each kind of learning situation for which kind of learners. And if we can do that in a comparative sense, then we can finally start to be able to say what works, when, and for whom. And if we had that as a conversational tool that we could use, that would help us to launch out of the muck. But very difficult. I mean, one of us could, or several of us, could decide to write one paper that creates a conceptual framework to be able to do that. And hopefully they would become seminal and the rest of us would start to use it. And I see that as an old school way of doing it, because meanwhile, there's all this development and all these new technologies that are coming out that renders that kind of conceptual framework that got published 6 months later useless by the time it's even published. So we need something that will be much more responsive and much more collaborative, and we need to do it fairly quickly.
It reminds me of something I did a few years ago. At the time I was working with preschool programming, and one of my contributions was a cookbook of very concrete examples and ways how it could happen in a preschool classroom. Mm-hmm. So we need a set of that stuff for all sorts of approaches. Really, cookbooks of this kind of stuff. Not as some people do, which is to follow it strictly, but as you do it in the kitchen. You never follow the recipe as it is intended, right? It's like, yeah, more like baking, yes. Another thing that I like to say is that I, in Christian, some time ago, organized a special issue of the Educational Technology and Society Journal. It had a theme. And the theme was, what are the challenges to widespread use of these kind of technologies? We now have prepared a questionnaire. In fact, we have it in Word, so we just have to find the time to turn it into an online questionnaire. Already showed it to some people. I think you do? Mm-hmm. Yeah, so our idea was to run that questionnaire of items that are challenges for widespread use of these technologies, to run through the scientific committee of this conference and through participants and scientific committee members of the previous editions, and try to get out this sort of survey of what is more and less relevant regarding those challenges. And I would like to ask you not just to respond, to really get as much responses as possible, but also to contribute with extra items that we are overlooking. Your ideas on, hey, you are not considering this problem, I think that would be terrific. So when you do receive it eventually in the email, the invite to participate, do contribute with your own suggestions, please.
Okay, anybody want to?
Yeah, Dennis, I'd just like to pick up on the point you were making about aligning objectives and outcomes, because I think it's a really, really important point. It's that the objectives in academia are different from the objectives in industry, but a lot of the effort can be aligned toward some of the same goals in terms of outcomes. So I was just wondering if you had any thoughts on how to actually go about getting the right people together and aligning those outcomes so that we can then kind of align objectives in terms of projects and collaborations.
Well, I mean, I have a few ideas on that. Just a few, though. I think some of it's going to take a lot of hard work. Well, it's all going to take a lot of hard work. And part of it would be, and this is going to sound like we're a repetitive record here, but the environmental scan that we're doing. We don't know what we don't know. We don't. And as we add more to that database, we're going to have a lot better idea of what's out there. And that will increase networking opportunities. That will help us to identify people with similar outcomes, who desire similar outcomes, and to have partnerships. It will help us to identify events for industry that we can attend as academics, looking for partnerships. That'll help us it'll help us to make alignment of those opportunities, because we don't know what we don't know. I think also it's just a certain amount of I work a lot with teachers, and teachers get very overwhelmed easily with technology in their classroom, and a lot of them are easy. They'll do the replacement idea. It's like, oh yeah, I'll take this technology and it will replace what I do face to face. But they don't look for opportunities to transform. Whereas in industry, if you're not an entrepreneur, if you're not innovating, you're dead. And helping to those in education to see that the innovation is just as important in terms of transforming their practice, I think is a big deal of those sorts of conversations. We're not looking for something to replace a face-to-face lecture. I mean, I'm not, certainly. I'm looking for something that will innovate and transform my practice as I work with my students. So I don't know if that helps at all. Maybe someone else want to comment on that? John?
I was just taking pictures of y'all.
You got me doing this a lot.
The thing that crosses my mind is, a lot of us are scholars. We're in academia. And academia has been set up for a very long time, and we're sitting in this incredible place that goes back very far. And time moved relatively slowly. No. Time has always moved at the same rate, technically. But change happened slowly for a very long time. And now we're asking our fellow academics to say, look, let's wake up to this quick change. We need to respond. And so we're saying we need to move outside of our disciplines, and we need to start doing scholarship and looking to the future so that we can monitor and adapt to change. And we want you to do all these things despite the slowness of the speed of research, despite the slowness of our universities. And so we're asking people to take risks. We're asking everyone in the network to stretch and pressure their institutions to send them to conferences that are sometimes difficult to justify, or do activities that are like, what are we doing? Or work with partners that are not traditionally academic partners. And I find that both fascinating and terrifying. So yes, we need to absolutely connect to assessment. Because this is about learning. It's not just about the toys, the technologies, and the change, or the scholarship. We want to deliver actual value to how people are using these technologies to learn. So there's a whole complex set of DNA that we need to identify, agree on, and sort of work together towards. And we don't know all the answers. We're trying to innovate here and come up with ways that we can work together, but we need you guys.
Yeah, but the other side of that, I think, that's going to force us as lecturers to innovate are the students. They are demanding so much more. I know we hate the term students as customers, but it's kind of becoming that, though, isn't it? And my lecture gets rated every year. They create a league table that ranks, how I've done my lecture to everybody else in the department. And if you're at the bottom, you're in serious trouble. And I really can see some of my